you're having a great breakfast. And it's time for Board Game Breakfast. Welcome to the Dice Tower. My name is Tom Vasel. And many great things are going on. Of course, the Dice Tower Kickstarter. Unbelievable, you guys. Unbelievable. One of the things I wanted to point out about Dice Tower Kickstarter is, in case you haven't been following it, we have Mage Wars cards that we are putting out in this Kickstarter. Some 8 new Mage Wars cards are in this Kickstarter that have never been seen before. Some new cards. We have another 8 different cards. We actually have 16 cards. 8 of them are in the Kickstarter. 8 of them you can get right now, brand new cards. And then in the bottom of this, you'll see a link to one of the Kickstarter updates where I explain how you can get those, or you can go to the webpage, dicetower.com, and find out more about that. But you're probably not here to find out about more Mage Wars stuff, or to hear me blather. Well, maybe you are here to hear me blather. It doesn't matter. News. Here we go. All right, in the news. Well, let's see. I mentioned this in a couple weeks ago. Han, which is a new game from Michael Schacht. This is, again, to celebrate his 25th anniversary of designing, and it's kind of a mix of Web of Power and China, and a game in that series. And that's a very, very well-known series, probably 10 years ago. People don't talk about it so much today, but it's an excellent series of games, so this one should be good. Z-Man is bringing back Babel. Babel's a 2-player game. Actually, hang on. Babel's a 2-player game. Look at this picture, meanwhile, of the new version that's coming out from Z-Man Games. But Babel is a 2-player game that's good enough that I've kept it from Uwe Rosenberg. You know, that guy who did Agricola and Kevin and all that stuff? This is one of his 2-player games. It's so mean. When you open his box, a fist comes out and slaps you. But it's a really fun game, and so check out for the reprint of that coming soon. Cryptozoic has showed off some of the pieces for their game Doom that came to Atlantic City. This is that Kickstarter where the people basically took the money and ran. And who ran the Kickstarter, and Cryptozoic swooped in and decided to publish it themselves, which was very nice of them. And they have now what they call a payout check, which is basically a game that's pretty much ready to produce. They just want to check everything, so this looks exciting for people who've backed that. Queen has a new pirate game coming out called Tortuga, and that's really all the information I can find. It has something to do with rolling dice. Gamewright is their 20th anniversary. I didn't realize they were only 20 years old, but 20th anniversary. So to celebrate, they're releasing a whole slew of games. A Super Sandwich, which is probably their most famous and popular game. Rory Story Cubes, which is definitely their most selling game at this point. Max, so bigger cubes. Sushi Go, I'm really glad they picked that up. And Quicks, that was one of the nominees for the Spiel des Jahres this year. Incredibrawl, this is a game that I did a preview of earlier in 2013, but it is one that I liked quite a bit, and I'm glad to see that's coming soon in February. Dead of Winter, we've been talking a lot from that about Plaid Hat games, where this is like a semi-cooperative game, a meta-cooperative game set in the future where you're trying to survive, coming out in February. Lost Valley is about to be republished. Interestingly enough, we were just talking about this. This game is 10 years old. I'm surprised they didn't take the advantage to put 10th Anniversary Edition on it. But it is an excellent game about hunting down treasure. And Splendor. Now, this game looks really cool, doesn't it? And then I read the theme of it about merchants and getting different goods to sell. And I was like, what? But the cards look really cool. And it's about collecting chips and buying and using cards. And these cards, some great graphic design. So this may be an excellent game. Woo! That's the news. Upcoming game segment, we talk about games that are coming out this week from, they'll be available at Cool Stuff, although because of shipping and delays and all sorts of things, don't hold us to these things exactly, but this is a taste of what you might see. 6-player map for Small World, which we talked about, I think, last week, will be coming out, hopefully this week. The very popular Roads and Boats. When I say very popular, the people who like it love it, with a kabillion pieces, the reprint. Eclipse Ship Pack 1. This is an expansion for Eclipse, which is it has more ships, and even though I think Eclipse is a good game, but this has me very interested. More ships? Count me in. Quantum, this is a fun little game. I don't have a copy myself, but I did have a chance to play this and had some really interesting, unique mechanisms. Venetia, and an expansion for Tokaido, that very stark, easy playing, very good gateway style game. Now, on the Dice Tower, we often talk about new games. In fact, I just spent some time doing that. So let's take some time to look back at an older game.
Cathedral is a city-building game in its most simplistic form. The player playing as the lighter pieces first takes the cathedral and places it anywhere on the empty grid. Then, alternating between players, you take one of your buildings and you try to place it within the grid. Each building has a unique shape, so placing it within the grid may not always be easy. If by placing your building you enclose a section of the city, then that section of the grid becomes yours, and your opponent may not build there. Also, if there is one of their buildings there, or the cathedral, you may remove it, thus allowing you to have more room for placing buildings. When trying to enclose a section of the city, keep in mind that you may only use your buildings and the border around the grid. If you use buildings from an opponent, or even the cathedral, that area will not be considered enclosed. Oh, and no corner touching either. It must be wall to wall. Players will continue placing buildings until either player can no longer place a building within the grid. The player with the smallest and or fewest buildings is the winner. I like to call a game like this a coffee table game, meaning you could have a casual game with someone, and then you could just leave the game out because of how well it blends with your table. The modern day equivalent would be Blockus, but I think building a city sounds more thematic than just placing blocks. Nevertheless, if you enjoy Blockus, I am certain you probably would enjoy this as well. So in conclusion, I feel the Cathedral is a fairly quick, excellent abstract game for 2 players.
Remember that game. All right, what has been released last week from cool stuff that you might want to check out? First of all, Steam Park. Go buy it now. All right, I'm like pumped up here in energy today. All right, Last Night on Earth expansion, Blood in the Forest, sounds delightful. Wiz War, Malefat Curses, also sounds delightful. The expansions, you can see there's a lot of expansions came out. Another expansion for Ginkopolis, The Experts. Well, I thought Ginkopolis was all about the experts. It's very interesting, like almost non-thematic game, but I can see a lot of people liking it. A ton of games, too many to talk about, that have been restocked. There's just a swarm of games that you can find out cool stuff right now. And some stuff from Level 99, Disc Duelers, Pixel Tactics 1 and 2. And then, of course, from Ares Games, I've been saying it was going to come out. Finally it is. And that's Sales of Glory. All right. Board games are not just for the board. There's also board game apps. Here's someone to talk about one of them.
Hi, Suzanne here with a look at this week's featured board game app. With the recent release of Eldritch, I thought a lot of you might be busy battling the forces of Cthulhu and his minions. So what better time to take a look at another Cthulhu-themed game, the iOS implementation of Elder Sign. A sister game to Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign is a cooperative dice and card game designed by Richard Lanius and Kevin Wilson. Players take on the roles of investigators racing against the doom clock to stop the return of the Ancient Ones by completing missions in the creepiest museum ever. Elder Sign Omens is the iOS implementation of Elder Sign and was released in November 2011 as separate apps for the iPhone and iPad. The apps were last updated November 2013, and they have seen regular updates over the lifetime of the app. Neither has ever had a price drop, and there are 3 in-app purchases, each one adding a new Ancient One, new monsters, features, and investigators. And this really addresses an early release complaint about a lack of content. The apps also feature a thorough set of tutorials for every aspect of the game, making it easy to learn on your device. Using art from the board game, the iOS app maintains and even enhances with atmospheric sound effects the Lovecraftian feel of the board game. Taking the glyphs, or the dice, and creating the spellbook feel is a clever interface choice that maintains a key mechanism and makes virtual dice rolling feel organic to the game and a lot of fun. All in all, Elder Sign Omens is a great example of how you can port a board game to a mobile platform without sacrificing gameplay or theme, but still optimized for the touchscreen and the limited screen real estate. And with the app version, you don't have to mess around with all the chips and tokens and mini tiles that you have to manage with the physical board game. The transition animations can get a little annoying, and it's not everybody's cup of tea because Elder Sign relies a lot on luck of the dice on whether or not you can complete a mission. But Elder Sign Omens is a really well done app and a lot of fun to play. Give it a try.
King of Tokyo is a fun, easy to teach game that brings friends and family together until the moment of rules dispute. When this moment arises, are you able to step in and keep tables from flipping, divorces from happening? Let's see how well you do with this King of Tokyo Rules challenge. The king has 13 victory stars and needs 20 to win. The king gets 2 points for starting his turn in Tokyo, which brings his star count up to 15. Then rolls energy cubes to get the card Jet Fighter, which then brings his total up to 20 victory stars, and he takes 4 damage. Brings his life points down to 1, still alive. Gigazor then plays the Primal Bellow evolution, which causes all players to lose 2 stars. The king says, "You should have used that card earlier because I won the game." Gigazor says, "This was a reaction to your card purchase. Tempers rise, hands are reaching under the table to flip it, and you have to step in. What would you do?" Well, the correct answer, according to the rules of this game, says that a person must survive their turn to claim victory with 20 victory stars. So the king is still going to be mad because he was wrong, but continues to play the game. And here's an extra challenge question on King of Tokyo, where you can let me know your answer in the comments section on YouTube or Board Game Geek. How many games of King of Tokyo would you have to play before you see both extra head dice being used, either by the same player or different players? Look forward to your comments.
Yeah, this looks like all the same games I showed you last week. Here's the deal, folks, and I'm really sorry. I got sick. And I know I should have reviewed anyway when I was sick, but I just couldn't get around to it. I apologize. And so I will try to do double reviews this week to make up for it. And whew, here are some more games that I will likely be reviewing this week. And if all goes as planned, I will be reviewing Myth. Okay, there's also a pile of other reviews and some previews and some other things you'll see this week. The Dice Tower will be talking about all sorts of things on that show, and you can find out lots more at our website, dicetowernetwork.com. There's lots of great podcasts there. We'll have another Dice Tower Showdown coming out this Friday, so lots of good things. Stay tuned to this channel.
Isla Dorada is a hidden gem. It was released in 2010 by Fantasy Flight Games with very little fanfare or hype, and it kind of slipped between the cracks. And that's a shame, because I think it's one of Bruno Faiduti's best games of all time. Really clever design, beautiful art, wonderful pieces, and it's accessible for new players, but also it's got lots of teeth for more advanced players. Let me show you a little bit about how it works. Each player has a set of treasure cards, 1 destiny card, and 1 curse card. These cards tell them which cities they would very much like this expedition to arrive at, and which cities they would rather the expedition avoid. At the beginning of each turn, the players are going to have an argument over which way the expedition could go. The winner of that argument places a disc in the place where we're going, and the expedition moves there. Players play treasure and curse cards if they apply, and then we argue about which way to go next. It's like an auction, but it's a lot more cutthroat in some ways, because you can make a bid just to try to trick the other players into thinking that you want to go one way and to make them bid it up to go some other direction. The cards that you get at the end of each round give you other options. They also give you special abilities that you can use. You use them to pay for travel and also to make life more interesting for the other players. It's a game that I've had terrific results with. Everyone seems to really enjoy this game. It's not a deep strategic think, but it's got enough depth and enough nastiness to it that it'll appeal to a broad range of players, and that's what makes it a Snake's favorite.
On One Hit Wonders, I talk about games that were on my top 100 list for just 1 year only. And some people had questions and said, why was it only there for 1 year? Now, as I said in my introduction, most of the time this is simply due to the fact that so many other games have come out since that, and it pushed these games off the list. But I like to give some more deeper things, which I'll do here today, talking about Victory 2. Now, I never had a chance to play Victory 1. Victory 2 came out in 2006 from Morrison Games, designed by Peter Morrison. And it's kind of funny because this is the kind of game, had it come out today, I almost guaranteed to be a Kickstarter. And one of the things that attracted this game to me when it first came out was Peter Morrison put up this blog, And he went over meticulously on how he put this game together and how, I mean, this game is full of plastic miniatures and how he went to the trouble to find the right molds to put them together. Now, this is a very interesting war game in a sense that you are trying to control areas. In this game, as soon as you lose control of different regions on the board, it looks like a giant settlers map. As soon as you lose control of different regions, you actually have to lose control of the units that are from those regions. When you destroy your enemy's units in combat, they basically come back on the board and will keep coming back towards you. So it's not so much about total destruction, it's all about controlling areas of the board and trying to push the people out. It's very unique. I've not played any other light war game like this one. And so it was very high on my list, I think, at 2009, and I still find it enjoyable. If quaint seems has negative connotations, and I don't mean to give that to this game at all. You can tell when you get it that it's a labor of love. It's a one-man production, and it really is beautiful and gorgeous, but it's hard for people to get into it because people like to roll dice and see stuff die. Here you roll dice and see stuff die, but it comes back. It's more like outmaneuvering other people. Certainly, if you're looking for odd and unusual games, this is a good one, and it is a game that I think highly of, although lighter war games in general have fallen lower in my rankings. That's one of the reasons, and there's some other ones I think I'd prefer to play instead. Maybe the Star Trek one, I mean, it's not Star Trek one, the Dungeons and Dragons one, Conquest and the Wrath, maybe Nexus Ops. I would prefer to play those instead, but this one would still be in my top 200. It's an excellent game, and I'm glad I had a chance to play it because it sounds like most people haven't. If you ever come across it at a thrift store, or maybe you can go on the internet and find someone who has a copy of it, it certainly is worth looking at. A unique design, Victory 2.
Welcome to the Ivory Dice Tower, where I talk about games and academia. I'm a professor at Syracuse University's School of Information Studies, and so this is what I do for a living. So this time I'm going to talk about what I'm teaching right now. I'm teaching a course called Designing Serious Games, and it's a tabletop design course. So the students are learning how to make board games, or card games, or role-playing games, some sort of tabletop game. And I do that because I want to allow anyone to be able to get into this course. If I did a video game creation class, then it would eliminate people who don't know how to program. And it can be very difficult to learn how to do game design and how to learn to do programming at the same time. So the approach I take is I teach this course on Designing Serious Games, which is tabletop design. And each week, the students read some books. They do some in-game activities where I present them with games they play that are broken, and they try to fix those. And as they're fixing them, they learn about things like rules and game balance and setting goals in games and coming up with making things more difficult, adding challenges, level design. We talk about that concept. But what's interesting about this is the students have to start the class by picking a specific organization that they're going to make a game for. And within that organization, they have to think about an audience and a learning outcome. Now, a learning outcome is something that we as educators are using more and more. And it's the idea of making a statement about how the learner will change as they engage with the activity. So it's different than saying, this video is going to teach you about designing serious games. But instead you flip that around and say, after the learner has watched this video, they will understand how you start this process of designing a serious game, and they will be able to take that first step. Because the first step is to come up with that learning outcome, to say, what is the thing, how will the person be changed when they're done? How will they be different? Because once you have that in mind, then you put that right up at the top. Every time you make a design decision, you say, does this design decision help to push people in a direction, help to push people towards this outcome, or does this decision take them away, or does it do nothing? And if it does nothing, could I replace this mechanism? Could I replace this idea in the game with something that does help make that change? And that's the first step of designing one of these games, is you think about what's the outcome, what's the goal, and then how am I going to put things into this game to help move people towards that goal? And this is what I did when I made Tulip Mania. I wanted to help show what the bubble market was and how that happened. So I did research on the bubble market, and then with each game design decision, I said, does this help bring about the concept of what a bubble market is? Or is this counter to that? And I use that as my guiding force in my game design decisions. So that's one way to design a game, but we'll talk about more in later sessions of the Ivory Dice Tower. Until then, my name's Scott Nicholson, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
This week I was reading an article that was talking about Magic the Gathering and how there's counterfeiting rings that have really upped the ante to where they're able to make cards that are almost indistinguishable from actual Magic the Gathering cards. And there was a thread on Board Game Geek where someone pointed this out and said, be careful, look at these cards. And there were many people who came on that thread and basically applauded and said something to the effect of, it's about time. The collectible card game market is horrible. The secondary market's even worse. And so, now we can all have these great cards in our collections that were impossible to find beyond that. And some people said maybe this will be a problem for Wizards of the Coast, and other people kind of applauded that and said good on them. And I have a problem for this for a couple reasons. First of all, some of my favorite stories when I was a kid, and even as an adult, I love Robin Hood. Love it, okay? Especially Men in Tights. But I love the whole story of Robin Hood. Robs from the rich to steal to the poor. That's a great story. But in reality, that's a horrible thing. That's morally repugnant to me. And you say, but Wizards of the Coast, they're owned by Hasbro. They're both evil corporations. First of all, they're not evil corporations. And secondly, even if they were, that does not give us the right to steal from them. I would not want somebody to steal from me. So, I have a few things that are problems, and the first is this. It is not right to steal, no matter who your target is. I don't care if you hate the government, if you hate this, but we're not talking about governments here. We're talking about corporations. You say, well, Hasbro is a big corporation, so it's okay to steal from them. Oh, really? Well, then who is not big enough that you can steal from? Fantasy Flight's pretty big. Can you steal from them? Well, yeah, maybe. Oh, okay, then Asmodee, can you steal from them? And you can see the problems that this is going to cause where we draw these arbitrary lines because we don't know the people. And that's the biggest thing. If people were stealing from me, I would have a major problem with that. And yet, when it's a big faceless corporation, it's not faceless. I've met many of the representatives who work for Wizards of the Coast. Those people depend on that company for their job. So to steal from them folks is wrong. Secondly, people say, well, the secondary market's out of control and doesn't have anything to do with Wizards of the Coast anyway. And there it lies in another problem. That secondary market is huge. You like your local gaming store? You like to play there? Almost every local gaming store that I've ever come in contact with, and I'm not saying all of them, but almost all of them, owe a great deal of their survival to Magic the Gathering, and Wizards of the Coast in particular. And that secondary market keeps them around. If that secondary market crashes, well then they're going to have to find another way to get money. And it's not coming from you board gamers, okay? We give stores money, but not enough money usually to keep them in business. And so we should be glad that that secondary market exists. Thirdly, I play Magic the Gathering on a casual level. I cannot fathom the vast amount of cards that I can just go buy right now. I could go out and probably buy 5,000 different cards for pennies. I can go out and buy new starter decks for $20 that have excellent cards in. Sure, they're not the best cards in the game, but they're pretty good. And on a casual level, I can play amazingly well. On a competitive level, I can do okay. On the high competitive level, of course I can't do okay if I don't spend more money, but that's the way it is on the high competitive level with pretty much everything. You say, well, no, in basketball, you can practice really hard to make it. Well, yeah, but then you're spending lots and lots and lots and lots of time. Here you spend lots of money, but you do not have to do it. The collectible card game is not my favorite distribution model in the world. But I certainly understand it. I certainly understand the excitement of it to open a pack and find things. And lots of people really enjoy it. So I cannot fault them. No one is making you play Magic the Gathering. That's the biggest thing I have to say all the time is that, folks, this is entertainment. We have no rights to this stuff. You want to say you have rights to food and clothing and shelter? Go for it. But to say I have rights to a specific entertainment? No, we don't. Now, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, they're probably not my favorite company. I think that they are not nearly as horrible. They put out some great games. Lords of Waterdeep, huzzah, Wrath of Ashardline. I love their games. But this is just wrong. And what bothers me is that when these people are like, yeah, let them burn, and I hope that their whole company collapses, and I'll steal from every chance I can get, and I would see 20, 30 people thumb these, and I'm thinking, really? Would you do the same to me? Because I would not want to do the same to you. We're a board gaming community, and we're trying to build up this hobby, to see this hobby grow. Stealing from one another? See how well a hobby grows then. I don't know. Robin Hood's a great story, but I'm glad he's not around today. Oh yeah, and Robin Hood was stealing from the rich to feed the poor. He wasn't stealing Magic the Gathering cards to give them to guys who didn't have all the cards they wanted. Big difference.
Hey everyone, Matt Morgan here with a new segment called Desktop Tabletop, where I'm going to be discussing what I feel is the best example of written work that discusses board games, the hobby, or the industry as a whole. This time around, we've got a story from the Washington Post magazine, bit of a surprising source, but the writer there, Jason Albert, did a fantastic job back on January 10th of doing a designer profile. He talks about Volko Ruhnke, who happens to be a CIA analyst during the day and a prolific war game designer at night. And the reason we're really talking about this is because the writing here is just fantastic. Jason goes in, he really gets into Volko's motivations, what makes his design successful, what makes him unique compared to other wargame designers. He also gives a great pointed explanation of what wargames really are and how they fit into the larger hobby. And he doesn't go into any of the common missteps. He doesn't compare them to Monopoly, say they're for kids, or generally treat them lightly as you'd expect from a major news organization. He goes to Ruhnke's house, sits in on a playtest of one of his games, travels out to Lancaster, PA, goes to the WBC and shadows him, and really it shows in the writing. Even the description of that playtest makes me want to go out and play the game, which doesn't usually happen because I don't put war games at the top of my list, but he makes me consider it. So definitely, when you're done with watching this episode, you want to go out and find this and read it. It's well worth your time. And if you're interested in some of the other stories that I came across and trying to pick one out here, you can sign up for a newsletter also called Desktop Tabletop. Head over to tinyletter.com/desktop tabletop. I'll send one out every other week. All the best posts that I found. You'll never miss a thing. So I hope you do so. I hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot.
All right, Matt, thanks for that. And that looks like it wraps up another episode of Board Game Breakfast. All right, this week. Okay, I'm feeling better. Sickness is over. Let's get into it. Reviews, Tom. You can do it. All right, let's see what we have come for you this week. Yeah, I'm so excited. 2014 is just getting started. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff, in stock, at coolstuffinc.com.